Hello, everybody, and welcome to a latest edition of Roll Call. I'm your host, Joseph Jackalone, and with us today, friend of the show, Lauren Conlin. Good to see you, Lauren.
Hi, Joe. I'm so happy to be here. Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday. It's been a bit, but you have been a very busy woman. So we're gonna get into all that. So I don't
Yeah,
know if they do independent of award shows for journalism and stuff like that, but if so, I'm going to put you in, and so is everybody else in this room, because you covered this
sure.
Diddy trial for God knows what, 8 weeks or whatever it was. But I want to go through a
Yeah,
little bit of the process. I mean, yeah, well, I want to find out, reactions and stuff like that. But tell us about what was the security like in the check-in process? Like, how did that go?
Joe, that was crazy. And let me just preface with the fact that I didn't really plan on covering the trial in its entirety every single day. I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you, but I think it was Nancy Grace and maybe her team. They were like, "Hey, can you kind of head down there for jury selection and do, you know, a couple episodes this week?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." That I was planning to do that anyway, and at least stay for opening statements. And then I started to do, coverage for her. I started to do my own videos on YouTube, TikTok, X, and they started to monetize well for me. And I'm not used to that. I never got views. I never got kind of anything like that. And yeah, I started to do it. And then I got contacted by another company that was like, "Hey, can you do these videos for us too?" And I was like, "Well, here I am. I guess I'm going to do this from start to finish." So I didn't have in my head how strenuous the security would be, as in like you go through it's a federal courthouse. You wait in line every morning, and depending on what's going on, you don't know how long that line's going to be. It could be anywhere from like 2 minutes to 20 minutes. But all that happens after I was getting to the courthouse at 6 a.m. to wait in line for 2 hours to get my spot. So that was crazy. 21 seats for press, 14 for the public. Yeah.
Now, what about cell phones? What did they do with that?
Oh yeah, no, they took your cell phone, they took your if you had a laptop, they took your AirPods, they took your tripods. So a lot of us or I would say 70% of the press would have to rush out during breaks or lunch to do these live hits. So they'd have to go get their phones, they'd have to get their tripods. It was just a mad dash, and you have to wait in another line. So it wasn't easy. It really wasn't.
But it
And
was
then
just basically like
yeah.
old school notebooks and stuff. I mean, they should have pen and paper, or did you have to memorize all this stuff?
No, no. I mean, Joe, I like my notebooks, I have them here. And these are just a couple. Like these are the last 3 weeks, I would say. Maybe 2 weeks or these two. And then I mean, it's so insane. Joe, I even filled up this one. Like, and then I realized maybe I'm not the best note taker. I was like, look, I actually asked somebody. I was like, I need tips on how to not write in complete sentences. So I did some Googling. I asked another reporter, and then I started bringing a highlighter, which made things easier for my novels. I would write novels, and I'm like, right, let me highlight this. This is important. This is important. So yeah, it's crazy, crazy.
Yeah, I guess the old steno pads and the Greg notebooks for the shorthand would come in handy.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that the other thing about this trial was that when you're note taking and when you're covering this trial on behalf of the government and their direct witnesses and some of this testimony, I think at the same time I was really trying to piece it together, like how does this fit with racketeering. And I think because they took such a long period of time to lay a foundation, I was getting a little confused when I was writing notes, and I was really trying to be like, okay, so I'm writing this down, but I'm not really sure why. And so that added like another element to everything as well.
Yeah, no, make sure your kids don't get the hold of those notebooks, right? You have to be PG-13. So yeah, I guess the old days you look for the old Playboy magazines. Now they'd be looking for mom's Diddy trial
Oh
books.
my god, I'm crying. I didn't even think about that. Sorry. I look ridiculous right now because I'm like, that is such a good point. Imagine them read. Yeah, no, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't want to see that. I don't want to see that, Joe. I don't want to read what's in there anymore. So
So I want to start at the end and we'll work
yeah.
our way back. when you were in the room when they were going to read the verdict, what was it like in the courtroom?
Well, that morning, I don't think anybody necessarily thought we'd have a verdict that early. So the day before, the jury sent that note in, and I think this is important to go back because it was quite a moment. When they sent the note that said that they were unanimous on 4 charges, hung on Rico on the first count or whatever, first charge, they said because of unpersuadable opinions. We were like, oh, wow, yeah, that's, this is going to be tough. And when that note came in, I don't know if you remember, but all the TV lawyers, all the experts were like, this is really bad for Diddy. This is really bad for him. It must mean that they're guilty on these. And I actually was like, well, doesn't it mean that they're maybe not guilty? Because the sex trafficking was part of the predicate acts under racketeering. So I was thinking, oh, well, maybe there's a chance, I don't know. But his lawyers, like, they kind of crowded around him and they hid him from everybody. And I think it was Tenny that was rubbing his back. It was bad. And I talked to somebody that worked on the case from HSI and NYPD that was in the courtroom, again, working for the government. And they actually said that moment that all the lawyers crowded around Diddy, he was like, I felt sad for him. Like, it was actually a sad human moment, like where, obviously he's a defendant and he is not arguably he doesn't have the best reputation. He's the devil to a lot of people here. But no, this guy was like, I felt horrible for him. It was a bad moment. So then the next day when we came in, Joe, it was like, yeah, we're probably going to have until the afternoon. So we were, the judge didn't even come in that morning, that Wednesday morning that we got the verdict. The jury came in about 9 o'clock. By 9:42, there was a note. And earlier that morning, Diddy kind of prayed with his family. And so they were having this moment. And then right when the note came in, I mean, I knew that something was going down because every time I saw that deputy clerk come in the room, I could kind of, I was like, all right, I've seen him come in enough times. I know something's going on. I just didn't think it was a verdict. Then we saw all these people kind of flooding into the courtroom that hadn't been in there for a long time. Again, other uh, NYPD members, HSI, we were like, okay. Then I turned around and I was like, do you think it's a verdict right now? And one of the NYPD guys was like, it's a verdict. So I started spreading the news to some of the press. I was like, it's a verdict, it's a verdict, it's a verdict. And then we all kind of were like squeezing hands because it was like, Joe, we've all been together doing this for almost 8 weeks. And
Yeah.
it's like, this is not our life, it's his life, but you're just so nervous. It's so weird how this works. And I mean, when when the foreperson read not guilty on racketeering and not guilty on the Cassie sex trafficking, I think, I mean, well, first of all, we were shocked. We were like, oh, but on the other side, his family, I mean, the gasps were, obviously happy gasps. He dropped to his knees. He got on his knees. He prayed. He was thanking the jury. I mean, it was a crazy moment. It was shock. It was obviously happiness for some people. It was, yeah, it was just something that I don't think I'll ever experience again. That feeling that you have, and it's just weird. I mean, you've probably been in the courtroom for verdicts or whoever. They know that it's just like it's just such a moment, and for this because it's so high profile, it was just like what?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely high profile. I mean, some
Yeah,
people are calling it a vent. I'm actually referring more to a spectacle than an actual court hearing. At certain points, people rubbing body oil, baby oil on themselves outside the courtroom and all kinds of craziness. And like I said, I've been saying all along, could you imagine if we
yep,
had social media and everyone had a cell phone during OJ's trial? I mean, holy cow, it would have been absolute
no.
mayhem. But
And it
so yeah,
was outside, was mayhem. Like, it was so crazy, and like, we were all used to working out there outside of the courthouse with our computers, our like I said, our tripods. They were kicking us out because of the baby oil stuff. Like, they were squirting baby oil everywhere. They were I mean, it was I did not expect that, I guess. I was thinking, like, there's people that wore the free puff shirts and the Frico is not a Rico. So I'm like, okay, that might happen. But like the squirting of the baby oil, I was like, guys, what? Like, what is happening?
yeah, no, I mean.
Yeah.
Great, and we're not getting into that stuff.
No, no, please. Yeah.
To you, what was the out of the all the 30, 40 days that you were there watching all this stuff, what was the most shocking moment or testimony that you go through?
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like there's elements of a few moments that were just very shocking. I mean, I think that Daniel Phillip, he was the second witness, he was the escort. When he kind of shared what Diddy would do with Cassie after Daniel Phillip finished with Cassie, I didn't quite understand why we had to know about that. And that just involved I don't even know.
Yeah, yeah. We listen. We know there's a lot of craziness going on in this thing, and we have to keep it PG-13. So
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
trying to
we won't
keep
get
it.
into the gory details. But
It was
yes,
just a moment of like, yes, Diddy taking other men's man batter, I'll just call it, and putting it on himself. And I'm just like, why did we need to know that? Like, what does this have to do with anything? And so that right there, you're just like, you're writing and you're like, the hell is going on? So that was a moment. Again, had to do like a double, triple, like, did I just hear that right? And then there were just moments that were, I mean, the moment between Tenny Garagos and Jane, that was crazy when like Tenny was accusing her of really being with him for money and bags, and she's like, well, you were upset that Young Miami got a Chanel bag, and she's like, well, but you got a Bottega bag. And she's like, how much is a Bottega bag? And then Jane would say, well, how much is my body worth? And then when she asked these questions, Tenny would ask these questions about the bag. Jane looked at her and was like, well, you probably have a bag. You should know. And it was like a spar. And Tenny was like, actually, I don't have one of those bags. And then the last thing she said, it was something else where basically the judge had to yell, like admonish the witness. And then Jane took a break because it was just like this moment. And then it was shocking because after Jane got off the stand, she hugged Maureen Comey and Tenny Garagos. That was another weird moment. I mean, there were so many. I mean, then when the Punisher got on the stand and he's talking about his book, and he says, the title is In Search of Freezer Meat, and Xavier Donaldson, the lawyer's like, in search like hard meat, because it's about erectile dysfunction. And we were all like, what? Like, that's what it said. I didn't get that either. I was like, what is like what? I mean, there's so many moments, Joe, that I just was like, this is not real life. This is not real. So many. I mean, oh, the other when the judge was very upset because it was TMZ got some kind of tip off of something that happened in the robing room. That was crazy. He admonished both sides, threatened to take phones. That was out of a movie also. I mean, there was just a lot of moments I felt like that were just, yeah. Just like, yeah, it's so unbelievable.
I mean, but when you think about this, right? I mean, this is such a high-profile case. You have all these law enforcement agencies involved in it, right? NYPD, Homeland Security, probably others. ATF, I'm probably sure was involved with this because it was
Yeah.
allegedly guns, right? But no leaks. There was nothing in, like nobody was getting right. I mean, and then you look at the Koberger case where everything gets leaked, and here
Mhm.
you have this huge, celebrity case, and nothing gets leaked. I mean, like that to me, I thought
Yeah.
was pretty amazing.
Well, Joe, I think that I feel bad if I sound like a broken record to certain people if they've heard me say this or comment on this, elsewhere. But I think a lot of us, we were so swayed by the civil suits and the court of public opinion and all of these headlines before the trial that, as weird as some of these moments were, we were all waiting for these crazy bombshells to drop involving minors or involving homosexual activity with Diddy, GHB, drugs in the baby oil, lots of celebrity uh, adult tapes. There was nothing like that. And so I think that was like, we're like, okay, we're waiting. What, when's the shoe going to drop? And it never did. So it was a little strange in that aspect.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's definitely. I was going to ask you, like, what was some of the holes in the prosecution's case? that apparently was one of them. And I remember I watched most of the videos that you put out. And when you
Mhm.
would run out from lunch, or when you were in
Yeah.
I guess an Uber on the way back home,
Yes, or a taxi.
it's actually, yeah. And you were discussing certain aspects, certain things, and I remember it was one of them, like you saying, like, we spent way too much time on baby oil, like this was just craziness. Do you think the prosecution kind of got off the path there, and just like what happened?
I do, because another shocking moment that I didn't get to is, and I think this is one of my videos that went viral, because I stepped out because they had to have a sidebar about the baby oil, because the questioning, and again, I got ripped also for making this like, it's coming, the baby oil, you'll wait and see, there's drugs, there's this. But they asked Cassie, like, how many bottles were used during the freak offs, what was the brand? How big were the bottles? And tell me about when you had to get into a kiddie pool full of baby oil. Did he warm the baby? And then finally, like, Tenny Garagos is like, objection. Like, what? Why? And then the judge was like, okay, let's have a sidebar. And I was like, okay, baby oil sidebar. What is happening? And then it turns out, Joe, all the baby oil really signified here was affecting interstate commerce. And she said this, Slavic said this in her closing argument. And I was like, wait, that really, that's it? That's all it was just that baby oil was manufactured in New York, New Jersey. He would take it across to, I just was like, I I can't. I really don't even. And so the fact that Mark Agnifilo made these sarcastic statements and really seemed to connect with the jury, and I don't want to get hate from this, but I'm saying that he connected with the jury because I watched their faces and I saw them. He kind of said, "Ooh, great job, HSI. You made the streets so much safer by seizing all that baby oil." You couldn't help but kind of like smirk a little bit, because
Yeah.
what was the point? Joe, really? I mean, I still to this day, I'm like, affect interstate commerce. That's it.
Yeah, no, I mean, geez. I mean, we're seeing, I mean, you're looking at this now in hindsight, because I really didn't pick up on this ahead of time, but in hindsight, it was another example of overcharging, in regards to this thing. And that looks bad, especially when you have a high profile case and the amount of money that they must have spent on this case between the Miami and Los Angeles and the search warrants, and to come out with just the engaging in prostitution part. Boy, that's a
Yeah,
failure.
it was, Joe, and I think that you said it so well the other day when you joined me for an impromptu live stream. You said something, you said it's about due process. It's about the Constitution here. And when we talk about this and we go back and forth about Diddy and these charges, and we say that he was overcharged, we're not trying to help the guy out. We're not trying to say he's like, you know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
you had to be in that courtroom and see that something went wrong here. And I'm not trying to be conspiratorial at all, but the fact that these were the best witnesses the government had, I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe this was what they had. And because Diddy has lived this lifestyle for so long where he actually has been in trouble with the law. Maybe he doesn't have any convictions, and Shine obviously was convicted for the Club New York shooting. We know about the Stampede, but like there's just there's people that were there, and I know they could only go, I think it was 2004, I believe, to, yeah, or something like that. But I just was like, wait, so it just, Brianna Bongolan, not a great witness. Don Richard, unfortunately, was not a great witness. It just, there wasn't, even the assistants didn't say what I think we expected them to say. All these assistants said that they liked Diddy to a degree, and they would share these stories about how he was mean to them. I mean, there was one story that kind of made me laugh, where one assistant was like, "Yeah, I forgot his Lululemon fanny pack on a hike, and he fired me, and he told me to never show my face again because I forgot the fanny pack." I'm like, this shit is so stupid. Like, I just was like, this is stupid, and this is not laying any type of foundation. So I just I was surprised. And again, not to be conspiratorial, but I have to think, like, did something go down where they couldn't get the limo driver, right? That he allegedly bribed back in the day during, to hold the gun during the shoot. Like, what the heck? I don't know, Joe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's not being doing a conspiracy here. I mean, there was some holes. I mean, like I said, when you look back in this in hindsight, I go, this case would have never even flown in the Bronx back in the day. I mean, they would have laughed me out of there. Say, well, this is what I have, and be like, that's all you got? Get out. I mean,
So tell me more about that, because you mentioned that, and so what you're saying is, if you would have brought this to, let's say, a state level or something like that, to a DA, they would have been like, "Get out of
yeah, they
here!
would say
No, you're not going to get
and they
served
would
with mine."
probably say all you have is the prostitution charge, which is not a big deal according to the New York State penal law. It's not.
Right, right,
And
right.
and that's the way. I know some people can be like, oh, you shouldn't use that word. That's the way it's still written in the New York State penal law. So that's the only reason why I'm using those terms.
Yeah.
The issue that comes down to is, it was, like I said, in hindsight, but it was a very weak case. I mean, basically, you had the prostitution part, you had
Mhm.
that,
Yes.
but
Yep.
all this other stuff, if you're not going to have people go up on the stand and say specific things, and then, listen, and people are going to like certain things and aspects of that, and that's what happens in these trials. But when you have
Mhm.
people that are saying, the defense, from your reporting, they did a pretty good job basically laying out the foundation that these were business transactions, and you benefited from this business transaction, and then when you weren't benefiting from anymore, now we have this, and basically that's right in sum and substance. I know
Yeah.
I'm taking 8 weeks worth of testimony and I'm putting it in 30 seconds.
No, you're right. And I think, like, it's like you said, they had the prostitution, like, hands down. We saw tangible, undisputable evidence that this went down, from, multifaceted evidence, from the flight logs, text messages, payments, undisputable. Again, with the trafficking, it the defense, and the fact that the defense didn't even call any witnesses of their own. All they really used was demonstratives, and just basically cross-examined the crap out of the government witnesses. I mean, that was pretty telling, because there was a nuanced other side to the trafficking charges. And I think that Cassie, that is just a different beast, I think. And I do think the jury probably had a harder time with Cassie, because it was so obvious that she was groomed, and how it was just, it's hard when you see this girl that got the living crud kicked out of her for so long, to not want to give her some kind of justice, that, you know what I mean? So that, I think that was probably difficult for them, based on how many times they saw that horrible video. And it was, Joe, we saw it a lot, and it was paused and on these still shots, very violent, a lot. But then, what we I don't know if you saw this it was an interview with George, the alternate juror. He even said on these freak off videos or whatever that we didn't get to see, that the jury got to see, he said it was kind of a whole lot of nothing. He basically said it was just like baby oil being rubbed. And it was really just showing that nobody seemed like they were being held against their will. And unfortunately, we know it's more than that. It's more complicated than that. However, this is what was shown in the courtroom. This is what the jury was shown. So, that's that.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I didn't, of course, it wasn't in the courtroom, but to see some of the witnesses coming in, and like you said, there were two witnesses. What were the names of those individuals again? They said they really weren't like that.
Oh, well, I mean, Joe, I really didn't think anybody, I thought the best, let me just go there. The best witnesses probably were Cassie,
Hmm.
um, Eddie Garcia, the security guard with the alleged bribe, which, the jury still didn't buy into, was a bribe. And that was because law enforcement wasn't involved. Or that was the reason why, because there is to meet the state charge, I guess, of bribery, the person would have had to have gone to law enforcement or something. So whatever. But nevertheless, I still thought Eddie Garcia was an excellent witness. And who else? I mean, yeah, I guess maybe the summary witnesses were good, because they kind of tied it all together. and showed us a lot of this stuff. And also the summary witnesses really nailed down the prostitution charges as well. But no, they're the I don't know, the assistants not super,
I
they
mean,
kind of said they liked
the,
him, Yeah, so
yeah, I mean the whole thing. So basically, the whole thing with this Mann Act was just about this baby oil stuff and not transporting women for cross state lines. I mean, that's basically what
no,
the prosecution laid out.
the baby oil, I think the affecting interstate commerce, that was under RICO because you have to, that's right. That's
Yeah, but yeah, the Mann
different.
Act was supposed to be, the interstate commerce crimes.
Okay. Okay. So you're right. So it goes to both, just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
well, that's what falls under RICO, right? So you're looking for those
right.
predicate crimes. It's a very,
Right.
yeah, it's very convoluted, but it's meant to be
Well,
that
then,
way because
Joe, so the other thing was when I was going into this and I saw the verdict sheet, right? And listen, the verdict sheet was very fair. Again, this judge, I think watching went what went down with Karen Reed, trial 1, trial 2, I was like, "Whoa." And then seeing this judge, Judge Subramanian, there's a huge difference between, and I know that this is kind of apples and oranges, but I think coming off of Reed, that was the last trial that I was coming off of. So I just couldn't believe how fair and patient Subramanian was when it came to, you know, listening to both sides, taking everything they said, and just going over the jury like a full day. That he stayed, Joe. This judge, he stayed till 8 p.m. I mean, are you kidding me? Just to stay on track, respect the jury's time, and do this verdict sheet. So anyway, my point was when I saw it, I was like, wait a second. If I was a defendant here, this is like it's you take a step back, it's incredible they did not convict him on the trafficking and the Mann Act under RICO. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it is because it was there, it's a 2-for-1 deal. You have separate charges and then you have it under the predicate act. So it's like literally if you're guilty on RICO, you're automatically guilty on sex trafficking. I mean, you need the co-conspirator, of course, but still, think of if you're a defendant, that kind of feels unfair, right? A little bit.
well, I mean, yeah, well, listen, the federal government when they usually go after somebody, they usually have a very tough case. But I mean, people saying that they couldn't believe the feds failed on this. It's like, listen, you're too young to
Yeah.
know about the John Gotti trials and all the other
Oh,
things going back in the day where they failed time and time again. It's just it happens. I mean, so listen, the John Gotti trials had some other issues about juries getting threatened and everything else that goes
yeah.
along with
Yeah,
it.
that's
But
yep,
but
yep. Yep,
these things happen, and that's why we talked about
yep,
due process and that kind of stuff. I mean, we don't have to like the decision, but we just have to accept it and move on. But when you say with the judges, you're talking about apples and oranges, and I want to follow it up with, but we're still talking fruit. We want our judges to act a certain way and do things the right way and give everybody a fair shot at this. And it's not that, oh, it's 3:59, we're not starting anymore or anything else, we're all going home, like we saw somewhere else. But it's you know it is what it is. But I mean, yeah, no, we want our judges to follow the law. We want them to do things like you said, and move these
mhm,
cases along. I mean, listen, we got the big Rex Heuermann case coming up probably
yes,
in January or February, I guess at this point. But
yes,
that's
yes.
going to be another and probably no camera case. So
Oh, yeah, I know, right? And no, it's true. And I think about this, I think I don't know if I told you, Joe, but like one day Subramanian, close to the end, like he didn't even give us a lunch break. He let the jury go at lunch because I think we had to do Rule 29 motions or something. And the press, the lawyers, everybody went from 8:45 to about 4 p.m. with one 20-minute break. And then just the fact that like how Judge Canoni, I mean, you obviously know, like if they wanted a sidebar, she'd be like, oh, it was like just such a thing, and he'd be like, sure, sure, like he was just so. It was just so fresh. I can't even. I don't know how else to say it. Like and also you could tell he was a very fair judge in the fact that he would give and he would take, and so if he would say a certain piece of evidence couldn't come in for the defense, he wouldn't just say no, I'm not accepting this. He'd be like, okay, I'll accept this text message, but we have to redact XYZ. super fair. You know what I mean? There was no, personally, when people said, oh, he's playing favorites, this and that, I'm like, I don't think he is. The only time I saw him maybe kind of or where I wasn't certain was the facts of the matter of Diddy staying in jail until sentencing. And again, I don't want anyone to come at me for this because I get it, but I'm talking about the law here. Um, Generally, you don't stay behind bars, like you said, for the prostitution charges. However, the judge was citing what the defense said about him being violent, Kathy submitting a letter. You know, he was really looking, I think, at the emotional components, which matter, of course. But then he wrote a note that was in the docket asking both sides for case law strictly about sentencing guidelines, no arguments. He's like, I don't want any arguments, just the case law when it comes to the sentencing. Because look, he can't over sentence him. That's a horrible look for a judge as well. And I had also mentioned, you know, he was joking with Diddy about leaving the MDC. I mean, that really was crazy. He was like, I know that you want to leave, you don't want to go back. And Diddy's like, no, I don't want to go back. And so I think everybody was thinking there was a good chance that he might have a 4th of July in Miami, which was crazy, Joe. I was sitting there and I was
Yeah.
like, is he going to have a family white party at his house, like for the 4th of July? I mean, that was wild.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
that was my
it was
only thing.
interesting. It was
Yeah.
interesting to see
What did
how
you
that
think
went
about
down.
that?
Well, it was
About
interesting how
how,
that went down in regards to the prosecutors basically saying, no, we're keeping him in. But if I recall correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, when they were looking for Diddy, right? Was he on his private plane and they didn't know what was going on? And there was like, when they were actually
so
during the arrest.
there was a no. I mean, so they knew when they did the raid on his homes in March, they did that on purpose. They knew he was off with his family on a
Okay.
vacation using his private plane. But and they also cited this, by the way, the government, and I don't blame them. About him getting on a bail. They're like, well, when the defense argued that he came to New York to be arrested or in anticipation of being arrested or indicted, he was cooperating. Well, HSI had seized from the hotel room 9 grand cash, drugs, baby oil, basically saying he's going to engage in the same type of behavior. So, you know, you can't let him go. They cited that as well. And that was, I kind of wondered that too. That was kind of a, I don't know if it matters about, you know, getting released on bond, but it's kind of like, why did he do that? Like he came to New York in anticipation of being arrested and did the same thing, like thinking he wouldn't be caught. It's just so strange. I don't know.
Yeah.
Eh,
Well, what's,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all I'm saying. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, what's really unfortunate too is that this case is now another in a long line of cases where, women are just not believed, right? Or the Me Too movement takes another huge hit. And, I worry about people not wanting to come forward anymore. I mean, you go through these things, you're a spectacle, and
Yeah.
then these cases just fall apart.
Yeah, I really hope that people don't lose faith in coming forward. I don't think that I don't think the Me Too movement should take, well, okay, I don't know how to I want to say this respectfully, but I think that the Me Too movement has been a bit more nuanced, right? Since Amber Heard, since Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. I think that, you know, it's been a little bit different, I guess, the past few months. However, I don't think any survivors should not want to come forward based on this case alone. I think that, you know, we can learn from this case as well. You know, I think that this was so complicated. And like I said, I think that nobody disagreed with the fact that Cassie was abused, groomed, and at times, you know, could have possibly been coerced. And I thought about this. I think the jury may have used some nullification on some of those elements because of the fact that they were in this relationship and it was so complicated and they were in love, even though it was so toxic and wrong and it was very, you know, one-sided with Diddy having the upper hand and being abusive. Um, but I think that survivors, they need more people in their corner here because, you know, Cassie,
Yeah.
the statute of limitations, what it was up based on the charges that he should have been convicted of. So I think that if if they're if survivors and abuse, that they get this a better support system, I think that would help. I think that it's just about, if you can come forward. I also think going to the police, if that's an option, and I know why that's not an option, I completely understand why. But I think going to the police first before an attorney, if you are planning to go to court, that also um, would help. But I understand all the reasons why they can't and all the reasons why it's complicated. So I don't want to make it seem like it's so easy. But I did learn, I feel like, a lot when it came to being on the stand and having a civil suit against your abuser before a criminal case. I mean, the defense attorneys hammer that home. They really, really hammer it
Yeah.
home.
Well, that
And
was a problem.
yeah, exactly. And the fact is, I also learned that all the people on the stand, including Cassie, who had these civil suits against Diddy, their lawyers, they were incorrect on a lot of stuff. And the witnesses had to admit it, which made Diddy look good almost. And that's not what you want either. You know what I mean? You want your attorneys to have your back and be accurate on this stuff. And unfortunately they weren't. It was really strange, really strange.
You just, well, listen, criminals are opportunists and they learn from other people.
Yeah.
And they look at a case like this and they say, oh, okay, this is, if we're going to do this, this is how we get away with it. And that's, from the law enforcement perspective, those are the things you have to worry about. But you also
Yeah.
have to worry about witnesses that don't want to come forward anymore because they look at what happens to you and they watch and they're not getting justice and they're going through all that stuff. And believe me, that weighs on people.
Yeah. It's awful. And that's why I hope and pray that this doesn't deter people, because again, this case was so strange. It was so it just wasn't. Yeah, I'm hoping that it doesn't deter people again, because it's just, I don't think that this case should be the example, but I totally understand.
Well, unfortunately, it becomes that because it's such a high-profile case, and you're dealing with
Yeah.
famous people. So you're looking at this, or you're looking at Bill Cosby, or you're looking at, you know, um, what was the other
Yeah.
guy?
Harvey Weinstein, or
Yeah, Harvey Weinstein.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and these guys are getting out, and they're getting away with it, and however what people want to discuss that, and you have they leave a trail of people who are broken.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And again, it's awful, and it really is. And the fact that Cassie is scared, that her attorney had to write that letter. I mean, that's heartbreaking. It really is. So yeah, I just don't. Gosh, I really hope and pray that people won't take this case and say I don't want to come forward, because I, like I said, it's they're not
Yeah.
all like this. So,
No, but we'll have to wait and see.
yeah.
Former OJ attorney Robert Shapiro was on this weekend, and he was quoted in the media and saying that Diddy could expect maybe to get 2.5 to 3.5 years per charge, but he's already been in jail for 2 years, right? So basically, it could be just a time served kind of thing when this is all over with.
Well, he's been in jail for probably 10 months now, I want to
Okay.
say. It was last September. Yeah. I I don't think, me personally, I said this from the very start, and now even more so based on the judge's last letter. I can see him getting 2 years total, maybe 18 months, and then sure, maybe time served. I think oh, Dizzy said most attorneys say 4 to 6 years. Yeah, I don't even think I don't. Have you seen a prostitution charge 6 years in federal prison? I was looking up some of the
The
case law. I
feds
didn't
have
see
the
that.
feds have different rules. Yeah, no, but the feds
Oh,
have
oh,
different.
right, right.
Like I said, if
Yeah,
this was a case of the Bronx, it would have been like, we're not even doing this.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Right. No,
we back in the '90s they weren't doing prostitution cases, so I can only imagine what the thinking is now. I know a lot of people say, "Oh,
yeah, yeah.
but they're not prosecutable cases in the state of New York." I mean, it's just they're just not.
I know, and that's why I can see him staying behind bars and not getting bail, kind of helping him with sentencing in the long run. But yeah, I would say 2 years max is what I'm thinking. But also, I mean, imagine he walks in October. Holy crap. I think
Yeah,
there's
because
going to be
October is when they're gonna do this, right?
sentencing is on Mean Girls Day, October 3rd. Girls in the chat, I know you know what I'm talking about. Maybe some guys. Do you know what I'm talking about when she's like, it's October
Not a
3rd?
clue.
Anyway,
Not a
whatever.
clue.
But
I'm
yes,
old,
that's
so
what I'm remembering it. Mean Girls Day is Diddy sentencing. And I'm gonna make sure uh I'm there for that. But yeah, I mean, when he if he walks out of that courtroom on October 3rd, it is going to be, oh boy, people are going to be very concerned, very concerned. I don't even, it's going to be, yeah, yep.
yeah, no, I mean, there's I'm sure people are worried about retaliation. They're worried about all
Mhm.
kinds of stuff. I mean, people set themselves up. They took sides and this and that, and that's in their realm, in the hip hop world, and we've known that there's been a lot of violence in the hip hop world in regards to some of these things as is. But we'll watch this closely.
Yeah, yeah.
Any before we let you go, any other big takeaways?
I I mean, I think that something and Joe, I usually would give my opinion on certain cases, and I would try to give educated opinions, right? Based on evidentiary hearings, pretrial stuff, whatever. I think that when I go into court cases, just like I went into this one, I went into this one, I was like, I'm gonna be so unbiased. With Karen Reed, I would sort of give my opinion. Well, I'm not so certain, this and that. I was like, I'm just gonna not give my opinion at all. And I think that was really helpful, even to me, to myself, like when covering it, not having any type of opinion. And also the fact is I had such a strong opinion about the case before I went into it because of the media and the headlines. And it just was so different from what I had in mind. You know what I mean?
That's
Like
interesting.
it was, yeah, like it again, I was like, all right, I'm ready for the minors. I'm ready for this guy to come on and say that did he assault, I was just it just so I think that like, going into these trials and these cases, if you've only seen the headlines, it is really important to dive in. So then even though, you're disappointed with the verdict, you won't be surprised if that makes sense. Because I think so many people were like, what? The jury was tainted, this and that. And I just want to say, guys, unfortunately, it wasn't tainted. It was the case itself. Maybe he does deserve prison time. And if I'm going to say my opinion, yes, for what he's done in his life, he deserves prison time. But for this case, it's really hard. So, yeah, I mean, I would just really encourage everybody to look beyond the headlines when you see cases that involve people that appear to be such monsters like this.
Well, that's a definitely interesting takeaway. But a lot of times people get caught up in the cacophony of all the social media stuff and this and that. But yeah, it's okay to have
Yeah.
opinions, but you also to have
Yeah.
have an open mind. And apparently, you went in this with an opinion. You saw something else that happened, and things change. That's what we
Yeah.
hope
I
for
mean,
in a natural discourse.
right, right, right. So, I mean, yeah, it's you just have to wonder. It's like, why did they not have certain evidence I don't understand, and I don't know if I ever will. I want to. I know that I've been in contact with some of Diddy's attorneys. They're not allowed to do interviews yet, but they're going to reach out to me, or hopefully I will hound them until they can, and I'll
Yeah,
know.
I
But
don't think they're going to talk until after October 3rd. See
I
exactly.
think you might be right. I just have so many questions about, this case. And even they even said like they met with some government witnesses like Jane when she was meeting. They met with her at the same time. And so I have so many questions with like how Jane kind of flipped. And because Jane on the stand is saying, oh yeah, Sean Combs pays for my attorney. He still pays for my house. Well, how did we get here? How did they it's just I just have so many questions. But yeah, even like with the crypto kidnapping case, and I'm going to be going to the hearing tomorrow, it seems like an open and shut kidnapping case, but even that case might not be. The defense is
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, we've got video footage of them shopping for eyeglasses for this kidnapping victim and this and
Yeah, right.
that.
A
And you're
party
like,
too, right?
yes. And you're like, what is going on? I need more details. So it's just important to get all the facts.
Very good. And thank you
Yeah.
for, rarely do we have an opportunity to get somebody who is actually in the courtroom every day and do all this stuff. But Lauren, it's always a
Yeah.
pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for coming on this morning. It's kind of short notice, but we pulled it off.
It was
And
great. I talk so much. Thank you for letting me yap.
well, you were there. I was there. I'm just here to facilitate. So, if we
I love it.
hopefully I saw some of the questions that popped up. We did answer most of them as we were coming up during the show. But I want to thank everybody for joining us here this morning. Lauren, you have a great day. You hang out 1 second, Lauren. Everybody else, you guys have a great day. We'll talk soon. This Sunday is my next show with Harold Schechter's written over 30 true crime books, and he will be with us here live. So, you guys have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.